Enoch walked with God. Now, don't get this Enoch confused with another Enoch that lived before this Enoch. There was another Enoch that built a city and named the city Enoch. And so don't get this one confused. This one is seventh from Adam in generation. And you can read about Enoch. What we know about him is limited. But in what little bit we know about Enoch, you can read about him in Genesis chapter 5. You can read about him in Hebrews chapter 11. You can read about him in Jude chapter 1. Jude only has one chapter, but you can read about him in the book of Jude. But I thought when I sat down and when I was reading, I thought, what are some lessons, even though we don't have much information, what can we learn from him? What can we learn about what we know about Enoch? Because I'm convinced and I firmly believe that there's nothing in God's Word that you and I can't learn a lesson from. And if it's not right there obvious to us, maybe we just need to dig a little bit. We need to have that thirst for knowledge that we'll dig a little bit and find out what I can learn from Enoch. And we're going to go through some of these that I've listed, and there's probably other lessons that I can get, that you can get from the book of Enoch. But in Enoch chapter 5, we read about him. Enoch lived 65 years and begat Methuselah. Now, remember, Enoch would be Noah's great-grandfather. So, there was a few hundred years between Enoch and the flood. Or if you remember, Methuselah died the year of the flood, and so and Methuselah lived 969 years. Is that right? And so he died the year of the flood. So a few hundred years before the flood, Enoch lived. Now, in verse 22, he says, after he begat Methuselah, Enoch walked with God 300 years and had sons and daughters. Now, you think about Enoch, and Enoch was walking with God. What does it mean to walk with God? Walking with God means kind of what we talked a little bit about this morning. Being faithful, being obedient, doing those things that God would have us to do. And that's exactly what Enoch did. He did what God would have us to do. Now let's look at some of those lessons, and we're going to go through these kind of quickly. And we may revisit this down the road in another lesson where we have a little bit more time. But the lessons that you and I can learn from Methuselah, number one, is to be faithful. Enoch walked with God, so that meant that Enoch was faithful to God, doing those things that God would have him to do. You look in Hebrews chapter 11, by faith Enoch was taken away so that he did not see death and was not found, because God had taken him. And so you think about that, because he was faithful, he received that blessing from God. So one of the lessons that I can learn from Enoch is to be faithful and to follow in the footsteps of Christ. Another passage, Enoch walked with God in Genesis chapter 5. Enoch walked with God and he was not. He walked with God and God just took him because of his faithfulness. I don't know exactly when, but you remember as it got closer to the flood, what started happening to the world? Everybody was thinking that they thought only evil continually. And by the time the flood came, the time of the flood, 8 souls were all that were worthy to be in the ark. And there were only 8 souls that were saved in the ark, Noah and his family. But prior to that, Enoch was living faithful. And so being faithful to God, and God just took him. Maybe it was at that point when God took Enoch, maybe the world was beginning in that downward spiral. And so God, because of his faithfulness, I'm just going to take you out of it. I don't know. doesn't tell us. We don't have that much information about it. But I do know that Enoch was faithful. And I do know that I can learn to be faithful from Enoch. Another one that we can think about is a close relationship with God. How close is our relationship with God? How close is your relationship with God? And who is it up to build that close relationship with God? You read in Psalm 61 or 63:1, "O God, you are my God. Early I will seek you. My soul thirsts for you. My flesh longs for you. You are a dry and thirsty land where there is no water." So when you think about having that close relationship with God, I see that Enoch had that close relationship with God. And I desire, and I hope you desire as well, to have a close relationship with God. Also, Amos chapter 3 tells us that can two walk together unless they agree? Now, a lot of times we take that passage and we think about that passage meaning us as humans. But how can I walk with God if I don't agree with God? So for Enoch to walk with God, he agreed with God. And so they were able to walk together. The same is true for you and I. We must agree with God, have that close relationship with God in order to walk with God. Also, we think about holiness, that we are to be holy. And you think about Enoch, look in Jude, verse 14. "Now Enoch was the seventh from Adam, prophesied about men also, saying, Behold, the Lord comes with 10,000 of his saints to execute judgment upon all." Enoch prophesied. He was a prophet. He made some prophecies, and he prophesied about the coming of Christ. And so, because of that, the prophets were holy. And, they were holy because they were righteous, because they were just, but because they were obedient. And you also think about holiness, you and I are to be holy. Sometimes we hesitate to say that I am holy. But if we're not willing to, if we can't say to ourselves that I am holy, then we need to work on something in our life. Because we're commanded to be holy. 1 Peter chapter 1, "Be ye holy, for I am holy." And that's the command from God. We are to be holy. And we can learn from Enoch that he was holy. And we need to follow that same example to be holy. Also, expect God to keep his promises. I don't know what promises God made to Enoch, if he made any promises to Enoch. But as we go through this life, I can rest assured that God will keep his promises. And I think we can see that in Enoch. In Hebrews chapter 11, "But without faith it is impossible to please him. For he who comes to God must believe that he is, and that he is the rewarder of those that diligently seek him." There's the promise. If we seek God, if we follow God, he will reward us. What was Enoch's reward? Enoch's reward was God taking him. And where did God take him? Where do you think God took him? Did God just take him out? No. God took him back to be with him. And that's a promise that you and I have. God's going to keep his promise. And we need to remember that as we go through our daily walks of life. Remember what Jesus said in John chapter 14? "You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions." And he goes on, "And if I go to prepare a place for you," the promise here is, if I go to prepare a place for you, I will come back and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there you may be also. So there's the promise. Jesus has gone to prepare that place for us. He's promised to come back, and he's prepared to take us home to be with him in heaven. expect God to keep His promises. Another lesson that I think is impact we can have on others. You know, I don't know what Enoch's children, what type of people they were. I don't know if they were followed in his footsteps, and I don't know if they were, followed God or not. The Bible doesn't tell us. But I do know that Enoch has an impact on people today. When you study about Enoch, what little bit we know, he has an impact on folks today. The same is true for us. Mike mentioned this morning in Bible class about this congregation has been here for a long time. And that's because of the hard work of folks that have gone on before us. Their impact is still impacting us today. What about us? What's our impact on those that are around us immediately? And what about the impact of folks coming down the road if Christ doesn't come back? What's the impact on our children? Will our legacy, for lack of a better way to say it, will our legacy live on in those that are following us? In generations that come, if the world stands, will our influence still be an impact on those around us? It should be. It needs to be. You know, we read about Enoch having sons and daughters. But did he have an impact on them? Possibly. But again, he has an impact on us. And we need to have an impact on those around us. Proverbs chapter 20, verse 7 tells us that the righteous man walks in his integrity. His children are blessed after him. So we need to think about these things, the lessons that you and I can learn from Enoch, and do our best to walk with God. As we go through this week, I want to challenge you to keep it forefront in your mind that you're going to walk with God this week. I want you to walk with God all your life. But if we take it a day at a time, a week at a time, a month at a time, a year at a time, and we focus on those times, let's make sure as we go through this week that we're walking with God. That means living our life, being an example of those around about us, influencing those around about us, or keeping ourselves faithful, keeping ourselves holy, and being just and doing those things that God would have us to do. If you've been struggling with remaining faithful in your life and walking with God in your life, go back to God in prayer. Ask for forgiveness. Ask for strength. Ask for courage. Ask for help. And God will give you that help. If you need the prayers, your brothers and sisters in Christ, we will pray with you and pray for you. Because we're instructed to confess our faults one to another, pray one for another that we may be healed. And how can I help you or you help me if I don't know what your weaknesses are? By knowing each other, we can help each other and help each other to be stronger. If you're here and you're not a child of God and you want to obey the gospel, that opportunity is here for you, and we'd be more than happy to assist you in that. If you're subject to the invitation in any way, we encourage you to come.